to have been invited by you and to be welcomed by Joy and Abby and Joanne and this beautiful, beautiful project, One Breath Rising, which just is one of those labors of love that sustains us all the time, all the time. The up times, the down times, the in-between times. And to have been writing with EJ through the Elma's Heart Circle, which our beloved Cheryl Boyce Taylor started for all these years. So thank you. Can we unmute for a minute, just for a second? It's an intimate group, and I have a feeling that people might just want to or share the sounds of the streets or the waves or wherever you are. Can we unmute and just kind of make a little noise?
Hello, Kathy. We're so glad to be here.
For Stacey Abrams and all the Black women who brought us to this place. Yes. Thank you.
So great, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Thank you for coming out today. It's kind of, I don't know, between celebration and nap, I think we're in all of those places. So I want to just start. I also want to just call out to Get Fresh Books, because it is so brave and tenacious to start a small independent press, and one that only publishes poetry. So Roberto Carlos Garcia is amazing and continues to bring out these books and has been so good to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Before I start, I just want to really, yes, Lynn, and thank you, Lynn, for being here. And I can't see everyone, but I did see everyone for a minute, and family members and extended family. Ella, I don't know how you're here because you organized something last night and then you went to another celebration and there you are. And Jenna, my sister in LA, who worked the polls for 3 days. So thank you all for being here. It means a lot. I want to acknowledge the land where I am. It is the land of Shinnecock, Montaukett, Manhasset, Unkachog, Korchog, Setauket peoples. And at this moment, at this time, there is something going on which is really, really important, and I will plan to go visit there very soon, which is called Camp Sovereignty 2020. You can check it out online. It's the Shinnecock Nation, and it's about honoring the sovereignty of the Shinnecock Nation. So I just want to honor and acknowledge the elders, past, present, and future. And now I want to begin with a poem by Lucille Clifton. And I just want to say again, this reading is really, and this moment is really an honoring of Black women and the work of Black women to bring us to this place. And the work that continues, because we also know some things about how these votes go and how this vote went that call us to work tenaciously to fight systemic racism and white supremacy. And that is our work. That is my work, I should say. Blessing the boats at St. Mary's, Lucille Clifton. May the tide that is entering even now, the lip of our understanding, carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind, then turn from it, certain that it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever. And may you, in your innocence, sail through this to that. Lucille Clifton. And now I'm going to read some poems from my book, The Lost Brother Alphabet, which the cover is by a dear friend and neighbor, Philippe Cheng, photographer. And then I'll read a few poems that aren't in the book. The title of the book refers to a sequence of poems that are elegiac sequence for my brother, Tim, who took his life in 2011 after long battles with mental health, physical health, and addiction. And the book also includes a bunch of other poems and a sequence, a series of poems that are elegies from my dad as well. So the ones that are the Lost Brother alphabet all are titled with a letter from the alphabet, and that's the scaffolding of the book, of that series, and refers to the title. So that's how you'll know. But I'm going to begin with a poem that I wrote in 2008. Remember 2008?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So my dad had just passed. He had pancreatic cancer. He was 83, and he died in February 2008. And as we know, Barack Obama was elected in November of that year. And there are a few references in the poem. There's a reference to June, that is June Jordan. There's a reference to Pete, that's Pete Seeger, to Brother Kirkpatrick, who was one of the Freedom Singers, and Toshi, that's Toshi Reagan. No, that's not, that's Toshi Seeger. That's interesting, related. I think that's it. So this was 2008. Dad, Pete, and Obama. When Pete sang at the Lincoln Memorial, I called to ash. I had played Pete as your last breath slipped out, the rest of you already gone. Pete ushered you, your hero sang for the man whose name you spoke the week you died. Obama, you said, sipping water. I believe something is happening, don't you? Pete with his grandson who lived in Nicaragua, the country we loved in its burning birth. Pete who wouldn't testify. Pete civil rights, Pete peace, Pete 1199, Pete this land, Pete Clearwater, Pete and Toshi, Pete and Brother Kirkpatrick, Pete and June reading poems at the UN rally circa 1983. Pete the unwavering for all who were taken, all who picketed, and as Pete said, for the young people who taught us not to be afraid, those Montgomery sit-in days. Pete in his power, in the place of power, suspenders and banjo, train chug of workers belting out a new old gusty day, ghosts of resistance swaying past the monument, feeding the hungry crowd. This day when Pete sang at the Lincoln Memorial, I called to you, who took a bus alone to DC at 80 to protest. I called to your ash, Dad, who took me there first. I want to say also, I think my niece, Maddie, is here, and I just want to say, Maddie, thank you for being here and being who you are. I love you so much, and I'm so proud of you. And she's been making calls and sending letters and doing all that work. So I miss you, I love you. This is called The Body I Write For, and it's kind of the preface to the book. And it's for Cheryl Boyce Taylor, and it came actually out of a workshop that she gave at the Hobart Women's Writers Festival. And it was a workshop on Zuhitsu, which the poet Kumiko Han brought this form to the US. It's an ancient form from Japan. And I think the only references, I found a spelling mistake that I made in the book, so you'll find it if you read it, are to Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, and I think that's it. And the prompt in the workshop, one of the prompts was The Body I Write For. The body I write for is singular and plural, wants to watch a whale for hours without reason, slick, mysterious, blue-black rise and drop, listen to its lone, eternal horn, haunting ocean archive, the smooth tan skin of crepe myrtle, barely alive after first wind, blooms now, cone-shaped lanterns of crinkly pink or white petals, dangling from antlers of bark, rooted near enough snowbell, kuza dogwood and mimosa to share a village of mycelium. The body is daughter and mother, lover and lover, wave and particle, track and train hovering around the bend with its death eye, long moan and grammar of loss. She talks to Tolstoy's Anna. Don't leap, she calls back into the story. Love yourself more than vanquish desire for a man, pride having broken his horse's back beneath him. The child body traveled by train. At Babylon, the wheels wrote, she rode a metaphor of missing. Dear Cheryl, thank you for asking me to write. Who is the body I write for? Is this Suhitsu? I'm trying to fit into the name of something. I'm learning to write for the decimated bodies offered again and again by feline cohabitants, mouse haunch, rabbit leg, pierced vole, knowing it is loyalty that brings these body parts. Still, I battle squeamishness and the limitations of a gentrified, bifurcated mind. Is the body the one writing or the body written for or to, or does it matter? The body is indebted to generations of bodies whose names I haven't learned, embracing a multitude of languages and places, often afraid to leave home. The writing body knows she must write the body more honestly. The white she lives is not a true color, but its weight is undeniable, and if not interrupted, will continue to kill. The inaccuracy of how light moves, the inaccuracy of scale, the inaccuracy of a body to know another body, the inaccuracy of love. The body is in the end itself, craving redemption. I'm going to read now just a couple of the Lost Brother poems. This is called G, good or not good. Hand at groin on the couch after dinner. Grandiose, a gazillion everythings. Grief is a body part. Gone, brother, gone, but a gun. And this is I. Inside you're insatiable, inside your instant gratification, inside your chocolate yodels, inside your irritated knee, your itching sex, your illicit, inside the ink of you, the eye of you, the irrepressible innermost, inside there. Would you were invincible. Would you imagined the possible, not invaded, irreconcilable? Was it involuntary? Inside the eye of you, inside. This is called Coffee. And with the Lost Brother poems, I hope you heard, but I forgot to mention that in addition to the title, I'd use the letter again. The idea is the alliteration and the repetition of the letter. the title. This is called Coffee, and there's a reference to Grace. That's Grace Paley. And I think that's it. Well, you can always ask me later. Coffee. Hand-rubbed dark oil. I share my addiction with the loved dead. My coffee berry meets me in a favorite ample vessel, announcing where I've been or hope to go. Buffalo, Bolivia, Kenya. My father poured my first cup when I was 8, glint in his eye, defying Mrs. Rankin's third grade teacher who insisted it would stunt my growth. He penned a caffeine verse his last years, sent me Bach's coffee cantata in duplicate. Balzac died of it. Flood of bloodied mahogany, ink burst to page. I dream a coffee anthology, unfiltered, musky. Mahmoud Darwish measured his exactly each Beirut morning, 1982, bombs exploding, beloved steaming pot of thick black. In Grace's 11th Street kitchen, long-haired women mapped out sit-ins, peace, and PTA, pencils and newspapers piling up, old-fashioned New York coffee time. D from the island Grenada roasts his in the next town. B of Shinnecock Nation names her smoky brew, Native Thunder. My father gulped his after toast with jam, and on the weekends, pancakes. Nuts he smashed in a mortar, and corn flour. No electric pot for him. He ground a mean bean, boiled water in a kettle, early, old bathrobe and slippers, long talks at the table. Where did my coffee-loving father go? My grandmother, Henrietta, savored hers for hours, porcelain cup and saucer, large hands sifting and folding her famous buttery plum cake. Henry Street to 63rd, granules of her transplanted voice, like sugar or Yiddish, like loss. Java grounds and ash help Russian kale grow. Before morning compost spread, John brings the first cup to me early in bed. How are you doing? It is funny when you can't hear people, right? I mean, I can't even hear you breathe, but I know you're breathing. We're breathing now, right? This is called Volunteer. EJ, am I okay? A couple more poems?
You're good. You have plenty of time.
I don't want to put people to sleep.
That's
Well,
okay.
maybe
You're not putting anybody to sleep.
maybe that's a good thing, you know, with insomnia the way it is. Volunteer. Volunteer, there's like an epigraph that I made up. A plant that grows on its own without being seeded by a human. Caw caw, finch talk, dewy haze, and one pumpkin appears, orange, ridge-skinned out of compost, leaning from its stem, and then I see another and another pop out, all leaning and full. Water splurges after a dry spell, and sprigs, called weeds, poke up between Lavandula Provence and Siskiyou pink, like new hair sprouts after a buzz cut. Running my path, I stop at the sight of a small buck in a field. Where did he come from? His chandelier of antlers too heavy for his head. I can smell the stillness he carries in his tree of bone. Geese honk as they leave me for another season. Who invited any of us here? Who gives permission to leave? And this is another Lost Brother poem. It's called More S. because there were some S's before, and you'll have to buy the book to read them. But this is more S, or borrow the book. More S. Sometimes it's hard to read these. Still for you, I crave some sweet, not shifty, not shut, not shafted or shafting. That sea we soaked, I want to suck out your shame. The sour, the scary, the souled self. Salute your soul. I am your sister. Here is my salt. Too late, this salve. Okay. This is called Amends to Parts of the Body. And at the time I was thinking about this idea of amends and thinking about where you might start. And sometimes we start not at the place closest to us. And many of us owe amends to parts of our body, at least I did. I'm sorry, dear thighs, for giving you a hard time. I know you've just been doing your job, not dwelling on size. Why would I drag you down when you carry me on 2 steady trucks? Stomach, oh soft heart in the middle of the torso, how I have wronged you. Dark grounds of Java at all hours, worry turning and twisting where breath should thrive. Wrists, thick boats on masts, you flex, you hold, anchor these hands like spools. Have I ignored the jet of you, the carve of you, linchpin of work, station for arm, with inadequate garnish? Puffs around the mouth, I've done you wrong. Survived through generations of smile. You've pressed through sadness out of quivering lines. Please forgive my vanity, wishing you gone. Tongue, I tried to hide you, thought you hideous. Not getting those tiny follicles are armor, tentacles sensing danger, your fuzz. Now I lion you into the world. Lungs, I've learned you house grief. I apologize for what I did and didn't cause. A heavy load these last years. Now I offer the tenderness of air. Dear brow, plucked and waxed and scrunched, when all you ever wanted was a curve, a broadcast, an open view. I promise the grace of the crease today. Arms, my wings, my friends, my journeywomen, I think we understand each other. Carrying water buckets, leaflets, and daughters, my cradle, my ambassadors. Okay, heart, for you, I'll delve into cliche. Sorry I race when I should be listening. Sorry for amnesia and neglecting to consult. Thank you for outliving your enemies. For the flaps and harmless red spots growing like volunteers in my field. For the unadmired, the hidden, the folds my modesty chooses to protect. I will try to love you. And now I'm going to read a poem that's not in the book, because I have to. I wrote this about 1.5 years ago. Called Falling. Over a box in my office, hard and awkward, bending my arm, yelled at 2 sweet students who came running in. I'm fine, get out. I fell perhaps because I'm getting older, because I was rushing, not paying attention or empathy for Jasenia, who fell the day before, perhaps because I'm tired. All my body knew after falling was that I just heard yet another story from someone I call sister, who is a Black woman in America about doing big work, then getting shafted by white women. I've witnessed these stories. no doubt, somehow, sometime, in some way, have been complicit, even if by not standing strong enough, speaking loud enough or not at all, not trusting what I deeply know. I thought maybe I should retire early to open a space for a Black woman. It's fact that in universities, more women of color are teased with adjunct or visiting carrot than offered full course meal. Maybe I fell because no part of me knows what theory, art making, or structure will adequately address the unforgivable. So I fall and get up, not alone, along with the stories my body plants, carries, and hoards. This poem is called Becoming. This morning on my jog, to and beside the blue silver Hudson licking the piers, I walked as a teen, the river my dad loved, now greened and spotted with kickboxers, personal trainers, and many-sized dogs. I audibly thank each worker I pass in orange or blue coveralls. Some I imagine in the WEP just released from a place with iron bars. Some with hard hat, dust rolling through their eyes. Some guiding school children through the dangerous traffic of the 21st century. I smile, say hello, risking no response. Risking seeming ridiculous because after 60 I can. Each exchange opens space in my body. Each on this cloudy morning smiles back, some small in the mouth's corners, some bigger stretching the face. Each says, "You're welcome." This is not to boast my giddy gratitude at legs working and having the time to move through these streets at 7 a.m. in the rusty air, but to say out loud on this page that, let's face it, yesterday I made at least 5 significant mistakes and can simply acknowledge a stranger working on my behalf in a city whose pain wraps around itself so tight it cuts off blood flow, too exhausted and perpetual to just burst open like water from a hydrant or unravel altogether. It takes nothing from me, and today, after the river, filled by the simplest of human nods, walking back on Bedford or Carmine, I finally once again, after years, turned down Leroy Street, where my brother, dead from shame, lived in his 20s. I stand planted on the sidewalk, surrounded by strangers and ghosts. Walk to Murray's cheese shop, moved from Cornelia, which had been Rocco's, where he worked when out of work. I order coffee at the newish Amy's at Bleecker, take inventory, fall in love with each artwork on the walls, want to buy Amy's t-shirt and coffee cup, to make this my new special place, to bring my daughters and husband here. I stand in the fragile, vast space between the dead and the living. I'm going to close with this poem that I've never shared beyond our wonderful Elma's Heart Circle. But I thought I would. I think it's new. I don't even remember, but it's new. It's newish. There's a reference to those of us who did not die. And Some of Us Did Not Die, if you may know, is the title of a book of essays that came out posthumously by June Jordan, a dear friend and mentor. So yeah, it's new-ish. Breaching and sounding. From the shore where we sit just after dawn, John and I watch in the distant green sparkle, a spout rising into cobalt. John narrates without pause, bubbling like a 5-year-old discovering a worm, or someone seeing snow the first time as it drops in great, soft, inexplicable puffs. We grab for elbow, thigh, as if pinching to be sure. When that precarious delight's beaten out of any of us, or when we slowly dull, that is when they've won, the gougers of eyes, wonder stalkers, pronoun poachers. Those of us who did not die, at times crawl into morning, crabs holding on to what hasn't disappeared in the bludgeoning night. And we scrawl into the world. I've been here. I've loved. This matters. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Those were really wonderful, wonderful poems.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really wonderful, wonderful poem. Your imagery is so it just really like it paints 1,000 pictures.
Thank you.
And you seem to write from a very spiritual place.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
And I'm wondering, when you're sitting down to write, is that one of your goals, to put a sense of spirituality into the work?
What a lovely question. Thank you. You know, I never really knew that. One of my teachers when I was in undergrad, Galway Canal, said to me, you're very spiritual. And I looked at him, because of the way I was raised, and that word and that concept wasn't really introduced. And I said, oh, really? What do you mean? So, but I thought about it afterwards, and certainly, no, it's not in the alphabet collection. Certainly, I have come into my spiritualness in a pretty serious way in the last years, and I think it was always there. A lot in terms of my connection with the natural world, and with the other animals, the ones who are not called human. But it's not intentional. It's just, I think it's the opposite. I think I had to allow that part of me. I think I wrote some really bad poems for quite a long time. And I think part of it was that I wasn't allowing all of who I am into the poems. So that's a beautiful question, EJ. I appreciate that.
Just so everyone knows, you can unmute yourself, and if you have a question for Kathy, you can ask it. And until everybody unmutes. The way you write, the one about the body that you wrote, I like to see how different poets handle writing about the body. And the poem really captures, all the things we do to the body, but there's such a quiet strength in the poem. And how it really brings forth how strong the body really is, even though we do things to it that we shouldn't be doing. And I see that quiet strength comes through in a lot of your work. And so this is more of a technical question. I myself, as you know, I write poems that are very lyrical sounding, very musical sounding, very bluesy, jazzy sounding when they're actually read. Do you find that quiet strength that comes through in your poems, do you find yourself fighting to keep that in when you're trying to do something technical with a poem? Say, if you're trying to write in form, does that do anything to that? Do you find that those two things are competing?
Hmm. Hmm. What do you think? I don't know. I mean, I'm not really very good with form. I mean, I work at it and I find that I tend to get it, depending on the form, but like, I practice sestinas and villanelles and sonnets, and I have a few sonnets that I could stand behind maybe, but I find that I'm quite stilted, but that the next poem is affected by the fact that I did that practice.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so I don't know if that really answers. That's a great question. I mean, I'm an overwriter, so I think that's my challenge is, I always need at least one good editor. And so I think that's my biggest challenge, because I think, some people can keep this strong momentum in
Mhm.
and I always wish to be that way, but I don't know that I am. And so I think that they get stronger the more they're revised, as long as you don't revise the guts out of them. Yeah, but I don't know if that answers.
No, it does. It does. It's an interesting
Yeah,
thing for process when you're writing,
yeah.
doing the writing. Is anybody on the line have a question? Unmute yourself, Liz.
Yeah.
There you go.
I lost my own brother in relatively similar circumstances a long time ago, back in the 1970s. He was already in his 30s at the time. How long did it take you to address that question within yourself? How long did it take you to get it out into poetry? And how did it come to you?
Thank you for that question. Actually, my brother was ill and struggling for many years. And at the same time, he raised he has 3 amazing grown human children. And he managed, he was living many lives, let me say that. So I think that I had written a poem while he was still alive called To Mourn the Living, which is in the book. So I had, to some degree, experienced, been grappling along with others in my family, this sense of losing someone while they're still alive, and how, all that goes with that. And I just didn't read that many of them today because sometimes I just can't. And so when he actually took his life, he was 59, and those poems came really fast. It was in October, and in June, my sister Susan and I went to Hedgebrook together, and I was meant to be working on a memoir. That was my proposal. And this series just came out. I mean, I revised them, but they came out pretty much like that. So it was, I think that they probably were getting ready even before, because as I said, although the shock, the finality and the violence and the abandonment and the guilt, all comes in a different way. But I had also been struggling with my own experience and feelings and with his situation and our relationship for a long time.
I think Monique has a question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Kathy. I've been listening to your poems this afternoon, as well as listening to Amiri and Amina Baraka. And I've been struggling with the question of politics and the meaning of poetry in politics. And I was just interested in that. I also asked a question about falling because I just fell and dislocated my shoulder. So
I'm sorry.
So, yeah, so I was interested in that poem and whether it's there anywhere, because I've also been trying to write about that experience. But but more so, I'm in the MFA at Brooklyn College in my second year, and there's a real disconnect between political energy and activity and what is being taught, and just the energy of this. I'm just totally perplexed by my experience there. Just because there is this, I have lived my whole life seeing poetry as, you know, part of a cultural weapon as far as politics is concerned. And yet that is a million miles away from anything that I'm being exposed to. I'm being exposed to a lot of stuff in terms of form, which is good, but the connection between the political and what we're doing in poetry, I think is absent. So I just wanted to check in with you on that, because you seem to have done what I would have wanted to do.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry you fell. That poem is available though. It's actually, it was printed by Portside, and it's at the bottom of my email. It's a link, but if you go onto portside.org and you put my name in the poem, you can find it. Hopefully it'll be in the next book, but falling, yeah, it's such a metaphor too, although it's physically very real. And I'm kind of like really moved that you were listening to me and listening to Amiri and Amina Baraka at in the same hours. That means a lot to me. I don't know, you know, people talk about this question, and in some ways I don't know how to talk about it, because I think everything is political. And I think it's just a question of how, and maybe that's wrong, or maybe that's an easy way out. I'm not sure. But I think that politics are in our body and in our air, and in what we can choose and can't choose. And even for those who choose not to connect with certain things, that reflects something too. So for me, it's not really a choice. But I do think that sometimes there's I do feel a conflict sometimes with, you know, EJ asked about spirituality. I mean, the truth is I often just long to just be quiet and be in poetry, whatever the politics of the poem are. And yet I'm also called, and also I have no choice, but also get great satisfaction and joy from being in community and being in organizing. But there is a conflict sometimes, and I just feel like the whole person comes into the poem, and if the whole person is, I mean, you know, a cup of coffee is political, I think. So I'm sorry that you're having that experience. I know of people who have had that experience. I don't know who's in the program at Brooklyn College. I teach a class that I love so much called Language as is Action. And I'm so moved by what people are doing in the so-called class. It's something else besides a class, but it seems that the work is embodied, and so it reflects what the experience is, and that could be very different. I remember Jane Cooper writing a poem from Rosa Luxemburg's prison letters. And what I remember, it's a beautiful poem called Threads. And what I remember most is the sound of the bird outside the prison window. So I guess I'm for the expansive definitions of all of these things, because I think these categories are very limiting. I don't know if that helps you, but if you ever want to talk about it, just let me know, because I think it's not fair to feel that you have to bifurcate, as that poem, you know, bifurcate yourself or kind of deny part of yourself. How could that be your whole expression?
Well, one of the interviews I listened to was Amiri saying that people think that because you change in the course of your life in terms of what you're doing socially and your your poetry reflects your life. So since he became a political activist, his poetry reflected that. But then for some reason, people thought that his poetry was diminished. And I very much feel that, like, there's this whole bifurcation of, like, if you include your politics in your work, big P or small p, then people disregard the poetry and the skill and the craft that goes into that. Anyway, I was just like, I was interested in how you thought about it, but thank you for your answer. And yes, I would like to talk about it at some point.
Please contact me. But the other thing I would just say is, I think it can be really lonely. I think some of these graduate programs can be lonely. Some are not. So I had some people from my program are on this reading. The amazing poet Lynn McHenry I met in my graduate program. Michaela, who was on before, who has just co-edited an anthology called Borderlines, which is, we're doing a reading next Sunday. She was teaching in my program. So I think it depends on the program, but I have known people who have, through some of these academic programs, have had to kind of go one way to learn the most they can and get the most out of it and also do well, and then have a whole other world. That's unfortunate that one would have to do that. But I would just say, make sure you have people in your poetic circle who get you, who get who you are and what you're doing and what must be done, because who's to say? I mean, you have to write what you have to write.
Yes, I would agree with Kathy, Monique. I just want to say, yes, do you need to do what Kathy's telling you to find your tribe of poets that are going to uplift you in what you write. I've been writing poetry for over 20 years, and what I found is, it's best summed up in this example. I did a reading with Cheryl Boyce Taylor up in the Catskill Mountains about 15 years ago. And when we finished reading, myself and Cheryl and Rodlin Douglas, we actually had people come up to us. I'll never forget, this gentleman came up to us, and he was so happy to hear our work. And he said to us, "You write about real things." And we looked at him, but I kind of understood, because I live in Westchester, and some of the poetry scene up here, their idea of poetry very much separates the human from the natural, the human from the existence of what is going on around them. So I coined the phrase, you could write poetry like, oh, the tree branch floated down the river, but then how is that relevant to your life? Where are you in that poem? If you're a political person, if you're an artistic person, somewhere in there has to be a connection between you and that tree branch floating down the river. And that gets left out in a lot of different schools of thought on poetry. So it's really important to find that tribe of poets that's going to bolster you in the kind of work that you do. And I'm kind of like you. It's kind of hard to separate the political, because we're born into a world that makes us political in some form or fashion. So how can that escape the work? It doesn't kind of make sense. So I agree with Kathy. You should definitely find that tribe of poets that really, is behind you. And in your program, you take what they teach you, you take out of it what you need to take out of it, because you've lived a life, and that life cannot be separated from what comes out of you onto the page.
Thank you, EJ. I wonder, Melissa Tuckey, I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you still here?
Hey.
I just wanted to ask Melissa, who is a beloved friend and sister poet, who edited an extraordinary anthology called Ghost Fishing, the first eco-justice poetry anthology. and has a new manuscript that is just incredible. And I just thought, and has been in this question for a long time, you might, first of all, it's great to see you. And so you might want to, you might have something to share on this. And Claire Koss too.
Oh, thanks. You can probably hear there's a dance party outside my window.
Yes.
So I could really relate to Monique's question, because I also had similar experiences in my MFA program. And then I found my tribe, as EJ said. And I think that that is key to surviving as a poet. We need each other, and we can't, if people aren't hearing you or embracing your wholeness, then it's good to find your people. But I think you can learn things in school, but I think it's sad if that's the case. In this time, I would say political poetry in the last 10 years has really increased. It's hard for me to believe that there's programs that aren't making this central to the work that they're teaching. It's mainstream in a sense. I mean, the poetry world has changed so much. So I just would say to keep the faith and keep coming to readings like this and finding other like-minded people.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Kathy, I would love to say something. It's Claire.
I would love you to say something.
Well, you thought we were all tired at the beginning, but after this wonderful reading, I think everybody is infused with a lot of energy and spirited feelings. So thank you so much for bringing this to us. What a great gift after all this intensity to land on your poetry reading. I mean,
thank you.
And I love hearing you read your work. I've read the Lost Alphabet, and just hearing the courage and the bravery that you went so deep on the subject of loss and coming out the other end. Like now that the book is published and you're doing readings, I'm just wondering, you know, how are you feeling about what you've accomplished?
These are two of my friends forever and ever. Hi, Jeremy. Wow.
Really great, profound, Cassie. So moving.
We have been friends for so long, and they have been like mentors, and and we had a reunion last week, so I'm so happy to see you. I'm really grateful that the book is in the world. It's I don't know, you know, when a book, you know, all of you who have books, you know that when it comes out, it's already old news. So, and then in this case, this book came out during a pandemic, and then this world. And so I'm happy that it's out. I found a lot of mistakes that I made, you know, and I'm really working on the next work, but I'm just grateful that I could write poems and live in poems and share them, and that anyone reads them and gets something out of them. That's really the truth, because we know that it's in the work, right? It's all about the relationship with the work, and for that I'm great. I'm just really grateful, and I'm grateful that people keep showing up to these weird screens that are somehow offer some intimacy, but also are strange. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers, but I you know, it came out in March. The book was 2 different books, and so a bunch of the poems, you know, it's like, was it 10 years? No, more than 10 years, since my last book was 13 years. So it was a lot, and so it's a long time, even though the brother poems were basically 2012. So it's a lifetime kind of, so, you know, which I tend to do, I guess. I guess I'm slow, but I'm happy that it could happen. And I'm happy that I'm working on the next various things.
Good, I am too.
Yes.
I think
And
we're
you're
all
not
working on the
slow.
next thing.
It just
There you
takes
go.
time.
Right. We're not,
Yeah,
it's not slow.
art
Kathy.
is long and time is short.
There you go.
Isn't that what they say?
That's what they say.
And you have to know that Claire has this most amazing opera on Emmett Till I don't know if you can put it in the chat, Claire, the title.
I don't know how to do that, but
Okay. We'll find a way.
the title is Emmett Till of the opera, right? Mary Watkins is the composer.
It's just amazing. And she's been working it and changing it and growing it for many years.
Great.
Somebody said they had a comment. Lynn?
Oh, that was me, Kathy.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, how are you? About the aging of the poems and everything. You know, I was so happy to see that you were reading today, and I sent for the link. And then this morning I got word that one of my students, a sophomore, died in the night, most likely of COVID-related illnesses.
Oh my.
A young woman who was a child of a single mother, and the only child of a single mother, living in Newark, and health issues. And you know, I didn't know if I would make it, but then I knew that listening to your words would give me healing. And, you know, when you're saying about the work being the work of a lifetime, I really have been blessed to been present with you when you were working some of those poems and sharing about the losses of our dads and you know, so many other things. And I'm just grateful that, you know, they're in a book now and I can return to them, and that even though distance separates us, that, you know, this is one of the benefits of our time, our very, very tragic and difficult time right now, that we can all be together in spaces like this, and we can meet each other's communities who feed each other and keep us going. And so I'm just really grateful to you for that, for your poems, and you know, the lifetime of them and the years of them and everything. So I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. You know, you're one of my favorite poets, and I love your work, and I love the way you are a friend and you know, just so steadfast. And I'm so sorry for your loss. It's just so real. It's just too much. That's from Maddie, but it's really from my daughter, I guess. I'm confused. You've just been such a, you know, companion in all of this, Lynn. So thank you, and I hope you just can find some solace, because how we move through grief, we never know. We just keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think for the people, and I think for everybody who's, you know, listening and not, you know, I think if we just keep trying, we find the communities that we need to have that foster our reading. And it's really what, you know, a big important part of what helps us keep moving forward through that grief, you know, not only writing our own poems, but sharing the poems of the people who we come to love, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, so thank you to everyone who put this reading together as well. You know, it's really great work to you know, to make these opportunities out there for all of us. So thank you to all of you as well.
You're welcome. Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah. Here.
Are there any other questions? Hold on. Are there any more questions? No.
I think we got it.
I think we got everybody.
I think we got it.
Oh, so I'm glad everybody was able to join us today. And I hope you had a wonderful experience. Please join us next month. Our J.P. Howard, who is the founder and I'm going to give her director, founder and director of Women Writers in Bloom, another person I've been writing with for a long time. She's going to be our feature next month. And please join us in January because we're going to have the fabulous Rachel Eliza Griffith, who's a wonderful poet and also a visual artist through her photography. And she's really written, actually all of her books have been wonderful, but the latest book is really, really, really a gem of a book. So please join us next month, second Sunday in December, which I believe is December 13th. And Rachel Eliza Griffith is going to be with us on January 24th. So we're going to break our normal format of second Sunday because she wasn't available for the second Sunday and we really wanted to get her in. So you know, everybody who signed up, please, we will be sending out the link to those readings. Please join us in December and in January. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kathy.
Bravo, bravo, bravo.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Take
You're
care.
welcome.